And John sees all this from heaven. You know, this is from heaven when he says, and then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach. Now, it's interesting. He says the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth. And earth dwellers, those who are earth. Some scholars, or you read some commentaries, they say, oh, the everlasting gospel, that's a different kind of gospel. The gospel is the gospel. In fact, the gospel is what gives everlasting life if you receive it by faith. The gospel, the everlasting gospel. It never changes, this, the gospel that he's mentioned, because he uses the word, the everlasting gospel, your angelon or your angelion, which means, you know, the gospel, the good news. But then he says to preach the euangelizo. He goes from using the noun form for gospel to the verb preach, and it means, you know, essentially to announce good news. He doesn't use the word caruso. We're familiar with that word because caruso means, you see those little T-shirts that say caruso, you know, which means to hurl or proclaim or to publish. He's saying this word here is to announce good news, to evangelize. The everlasting gospel is the gospel, and there is only one gospel, and it's the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's the only gospel. When you read the Gospel of Mark, he starts off his gospel with saying, the gospel of Jesus Christ. There's only one gospel. Paul would state to the churches in Galatia, Paul said that, I marvel that you're turning away so soon from him who called you into the grace of Christ to a different gospel, which is not another. But there are some who trouble you and want to pervert the gospel of Christ. But even if we, and he included himself, or an angel from heaven preached any other gospel to you than what we have preached to you, let him be accursed, anathema. So Paul somehow said, even if an angel from heaven preach, and an angel from heaven will preach. I don't know how Paul knew that. Maybe he found it out when he says, I know a man that went to the third heaven who heard things that were inexpressible to others. Maybe they said, one day I'll be preaching, Paul. I don't know. But I do know the message is being proclaimed here from the throne room of God. This angel is not on earth. He's in heaven. And a flying angel through the midst of heaven, and the whole entire world, everybody in the world, it will hear it. It's preached to every, ethnicity. The angel's bilingual. Everybody's going to understand what he's saying. Nobody's going to say, well, I didn't understand what he meant. Because this is God closing the window of people being able to come in. He's closing the window. And because this is going towards the end of the tribulation period. It says, to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, or kindred, every tongue, tribe, tongue, and people. Now, these are the earth dwellers. Now, remember when we read in Revelation chapter 9, that's why you got to study this carefully. Remember in chapter 9 when it says at the end of that chapter, the last two verses, when it says, the rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues, did not repent of their works, of the works of their hands, that they should not worship demons and idols of gold, silver, brass, stone and wood, which neither see nor hear nor walk. And it says, and they did not repent of their murders, of their sorceries. The word sorcery in that chapter means pharmakia, drug use, or selling drugs. I'm sure during the tribulation period, people are going to be getting stoned. They're going to be getting stoned. They're going to be drinking, going crazy because they'll be like, we got to stop. Just like during this plague right now in COVID-19, alcohol sales went up like crazy. You don't hear the alcohol store saying, oh, man, I don't know how we're going to make it. They making money because people worry. The devil know how to get any of us anyway. He says, look, I'll affect your health and your purse, and you'll do whatever I want you to do. And here it says that in Revelation 9, it says, they do not repent of their murders, of their sorceries, or their sexual immorality, or their thefts. You would think they would repent with the world falling apart, the 1/4 destroyed. They won't repent. The locusts coming from the boozer, they've been stung, like scorpions. They won't repent. When you get to chapter 16, it says, they blasphemed God, the God of heaven, because of their pains and their sores, and did not repent of their deeds. And God is still extending his hand through this angel preaching the everlasting gospel. God is still extending his hand to man. This is man's last offer. You need to repent. Everything else is falling apart. You need to repent. And some still won't repent. And after that, he will completely pour out his wrath on a Christ-rejected world. Nothing else redeemable. Remember Jesus said in Matthew, Jesus said that, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come. Then the end would come. In Matthew 24:14, he says, then the end will come.